Hey everyone, and welcome to another edition of UK Media Warrior. I'm going to be looking at the original Magnificent Seven today, with the remake still out in theatres and doing pretty well for Anton Fuqua, the director of the film, and Denzel Washington and Chris Pratt. I thought I'd look back at what inspired them to do this remake. Now obviously the original Magnificent Seven is a remake of Kurosawa's The Seven Samurai, which is an amazing, fantastic film, and I would suggest anyone who is a film buff, or even who just enjoys films in general, to try and find a copy of The Seven Samurai at some point in your life to watch. It's well worth your time, believe me. But the original, 1960, directed by John Sturges, obviously starring Brynner, Steve McQueen, Charles Bronson, James Coburn, Robert Vaughn, just to name a few. So you had all of these now quite famous actors starring in this film. Now at this point, Brynner was the main one. He was the one that everyone had heard of. He was the big name. Everybody else was really just starting off in their careers. Steve McQueen, who is obviously huge now for the many films that he's done, The Great Escape, Bullet, Tower and Inferno. I mean, everyone knows who Steve McQueen is, but back then he was a relative unknown. But then a lot of them were. Robert Vaughn, who everyone probably now knows as Napoleon Solo, the man from U.N.C.L.E. This was pretty much the start of his career. James Coburn, who was also in The Great Escape. Actually thinking of it. Yeah, 3 of the actors in the Magnificent Seven went on to join up in The Great Escape, the Second World War escape film. You had Charles Bronson, Steve McQueen, and James Coburn, all in The Great Escape. But anyway, now the reason, to my mind at least, this Magnificent Seven film holds up better and is a better film in almost every class than the Anton Fuqua current one, is that Fuqua's one is basically just a popcorn action western. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. It's a perfectly fine film. It is a good film. It's a fun film. It's got some great fight scenes in it. That's fine. There's no problem with that whatsoever. But the original Magnificent, 1960 Magnificent Seven film, is basically considered the last hurrah of the classic westerns. After that, we didn't really get any other type of westerns other than Sergio Leone spaghetti westerns, you know, Fistful of Dollars, The Good, the Bad, the Ugly, the Clint Eastwood westerns that were filmed in Italy, of all places. But since then, obviously, the westerns are trying to make a comeback. We've had Silverado, we've got obviously the new Magnificent Seven, we've had The Hateful Eight from Quentin Tarantino. So they're still peppering in there every now and then, but not like they used to be. And the Magnificent Seven, to my mind, holds up as one of the classic westerns, down to the fact that each one of the characters is in and of themselves a totally rounded personality. You understand them, you care about them, you bond with them during the course of this film. And that is something that the new film doesn't take the time to do. For example, I'll give you a couple of examples. I mean, in the new film, you only really get to bond with Chris Pratt and Denzel Washington. You don't really find out anything about any of the others' history. Even Hawk, as Goodnight Robichaux, you find a little bit out that he's a sharpshooter who's with the Confederate Army. He's suffering from PTSD now. But other than that, they're all pretty two-dimensional. Now, with the 1960 Magnificent Seven, each one of the seven has his own character that you see that's rich and vibrant, and you see it on film. And they don't have to narrate it to you. They don't have to tell you. You hear about it in conversations that the seven have and the villagers have with the seven. And you care about the villagers being attacked, you care about the seven, and you even understand where the baddie, Calvera, is coming from. This is a guy who's in charge of a bandit group of like 30-40 people, 30-40 men. And he's got to feed them, he's got to get ammunition for them, guns, you know, he's got to make money, you know, so it sounds weird, but he explains this during the course of the film, that The reason he keeps raiding this village, he comes back like once a year or twice a year to get food, is so he can feed his men. He's like a father with this huge family that he has to look after. So you understand why Calvera keeps coming back, why he has to keep coming back. But with the Seven, I mean, you've got Yul Brynner, who plays Chris. Now, he's basically just a gunman. He's floating around the West. Him and Steve McQueen, who plays Vin, they have this conversation in the town at the beginning of the film, and it's, you know, they're both gunmen, they're both guns for hire, and they, you know, Yul Brynner says to McQueen's character, you know, well, have you got anything planned? Have you got any jobs lined up? And Steve McQueen's like, well, yeah, I've been offered a job as a, you know, a store clerk, you know, down the thing, sweeping up and serving customers. And they sort of like look at each other, and yeah, that's not really their type of thing.
Got anything lined up?
Yeah. I'm gonna take a job in a grocery store. Fella says I'm gonna make a Cracker Jack clerk. Cracker Jack.
If that's your taste.
But that's all that's left. The West is becoming civilized, and because of that, the days of the gunslinger and the hired gun are slowly fading out. And this is the twilight for the gunslinger. This is the twilight of the gunfighter and that era. And that's portrayed during this film. So both of these guys, Yul Brynner and Steve McQueen, both their characters are bored, looking for adventure, looking for something to do. And Yul Brynner takes on the job for the villagers because, one, he's bored, but two, he understands the plight that they're in, that they need somebody to help them, that they're good people who are being victimized by Calvera, the bandit leader, and he wants to help them. So that's his reason for going down there. They tell him straight from the bat, all we can do is offer you $20 and, you know, food and board. We'll feed you, we'll give you somewhere to sleep. That's all we can do, $20. And Steve McQueen says when he is offered the job, well, $20 wouldn't even pay for my bullets. But what else is there? Becoming a store clerk? He doesn't want to do that. He doesn't want to get into that line. He wants to hang on to the life that he's led as long as he can. So he decides to join Yul Brynner. And then they go and find a few of the other seven. Now, Harry Price is one of the characters who's an old friend of Yul Brynner's character, Chris. And he turns up because he's heard that Chris is hiring gunmen. And he assumes that the village that they're going to defend must have something worth defending. A gold mine, silver mine, a gem mine. Something important, something that's worth something, wealthy, something that's going to give him some money. Why else will Calvera keep coming back to this village? In his head, the reason is there has to be wealth there. So he talks himself into going with Chris because he's convinced that there's a gold mine or something waiting at the end of this particular rainbow. Charles Bronson, another gunslinger, and when they talk to him and they try to hire him, you find out that he used to be paid hundreds of dollars for his work as a gunfighter all over the West. But because those jobs have just disappeared now, he's chopping wood behind some guy's house to pay to have breakfast, just to feed himself, because that's all there is. So initially when they offer him the $20 for 6 days work, he's like, no. But then as they're walking off, he reconsiders and he says, well, at the moment, $20 sounds like a lot of money. I'm in. So he goes because he's got nothing else. You know, he's down his luck. He's got no money. What else is there for him? So that's his reason for going. Robert Vaughn. Now, he plays almost like an assassin gunfighter who's obviously on the run because he's killed a couple of brothers. And he needs somewhere to hide out. So when, you know, Chris says to him, well, it's a job over 6 days down beyond the border in Mexico, he says, well, that sounds about right. That'll give him enough time to hide out from the heat. So that's his reason for going, just to hide out. And the same with the other seven. They've all got their own particular reasons, very, very good reasons that you understand and you can connect with, which isn't the case for the new film. None of them make sense for being where they're going. But the original seven all have a point, all have a reason, and all have a path, a journey that they're going on. And the film takes time to let the seven bond with the villagers. They have a celebration at the village that the 7 watch, and they understand these villagers. They get to know them, they get to bond with them, they become friends. So they want to help them, they want to defend them. So when Calvera finally does attack, or not attack, but when he comes back to the village to get his food, he finds the 7 waiting for him, and they run him out of town, killing like 9 or 10 of his men. And they think, great, okay, he's gone. You know, the villagers are convinced, great, we've given him a bloody nose, he's gone, he'll never come back. That's the end of him. The 7 aren't convinced, and one of them, the youngest one, the one who Chris, Yul Brynner's character, didn't want to take on because he's an inexperienced young kid, goes out into the hills to find Calvera's troop and find out that Calvera can't afford to leave. He can't afford to run away because he's got nowhere else to go and his men are hungry. He has to come back to the village because he has to get the food that's there. So the 7 decide that they're going to go out and they're going to hit Calvera's camp, and that should hopefully be the final nail in the coffin and drive them away. When they get there, they find that the camp is empty. And by the time they get back to the village elder, the guy in charge, has made a deal with Calvera and basically betrayed the 7. And Calvera says to him, look, I don't want any trouble from your friends north of the border, so I'm not going to kill you, but give me your guns, we'll ride you out of town, we'll give you your guns when you're out of town and gone, and then you just keep riding and forget about what happened here. These villagers are obviously not worthy of your faith and your loyalty, they betrayed you. Give me your guns, you go, you stay alive, we'll give you your guns back, you go back north, everything's cool. So the 7 leave, they're given their guns back, and Yul Brynner's character's like, well, you know, I'm going to go back. And James Coburn's character's like, well, nobody throws me my gun and tells me to leave. So he goes back, and slowly, one by one, they all decide to go back and help the villagers, other than Harry, who's finally figured out that, okay, there is no gold mine, there is no silver mine. He isn't going to die for these villagers because he doesn't really care. So he rides out, he's gone. But the other 6 go back to town and they start fighting these bandits. They're outnumbered. There's like 35 bandits against 6 of these gunmen. But they do pretty well, but slowly, one by one, they start getting picked off. Robert Vaughn's character, who is suffering from almost PTSD, the same as Goodnight Robichaux in the new film is. He's scared, he's losing his nerve, and he's afraid he's becoming a coward. And he fights against his own desire to just stay hidden and stay safe during the fight, and goes into this room and shoots like 5 or 6 of the bandits to free some of the villagers who were held prisoner. And he walks out of the room feeling renewed, feeling, okay, yeah, okay, I did that, I'm good, I've got my nerve is still here, I'm still the man I always was. And then he gets shot. And you feel it. You can see the look of relief on his face when he walks out of the room with his guns, and he thinks, "Okay, you know, I'm still a man." And then he gets shot, and the look of, you know, despair, and then he just sags to the ground, and it hits you because you've travelled with this guy. You know what he's gone through to get to this point, and just when he succeeds, it's all taken away from him. And the same with the other 7, one by one, they start getting shot and killed, and Harry comes riding back into town to save Chris's life because he realises that his friendship with Chris precedes anything else, that even his own safety, and he rides in a blaze of gunfire. His horse gets shot down, he goes running towards Chris to try and help him, and then he gets shot in the back, and Chris carries him into a building where he dies in Chris's arms.
Hold on, Chris, I'll get you out of there.
And this is the thing, this is the point, at this point in the film, you're seeing the 7 slowly being taken out one by one. They're mowing down bandits left, right and centre. And Calvera gets shot by Chris, but by the end of the film, there's only 3 of the 7 left. But every time one of the 7 dies, you feel it. You feel it in your heart. You've bonded with these characters over 2 hours of film play, and they've become your friends. So by the end of the film, you see the line of graves where the villagers have dug the graves for the 7. And you feel it. And that is something that the new film doesn't give you. It doesn't give you that depth. You don't care if they die. It's just an action film. You know, there's 7 of them. You didn't expect many of them to live. So when they get picked off, I mean, yeah, okay, it's spectacular, but you don't really feel it, not inside, not like you do with this film. So at the end of it, Yul Brynner, Steve McQueen, and the young Mexican, the young Latino kid who was the most inexperienced of the lot, have survived. And the Mexican kid who wanted, all the way through the film, he wanted to become like Steve McQueen and Yul Brynner's characters. He wanted to become a gunfighter. By the end of the film, he realises that isn't really what he wants to do. And he's fallen in love with one of the girls in the village. So he goes back into town, hangs up his guns, rolls up his sleeves to start working in the village, become one of the villagers, and to stay with this girl, leaving Steve McQueen and Yul Brynner sitting on their horses, looking back at the village. And Yul Brynner says to Steve McQueen, you know, people like us are never going to win. The villagers are always the ones who are going to win. People like us never win. But he's fine with that because he understands that that's his life, and that's the path he has chosen, and he's happy that he's managed to give these people back their lives and protect them from Calvera.
The old man was right. Only the farmers won. We lost. We always lose.
And that's the film. That's the essence of the film. It's the story of a gunfighter's twilight, when this sort of man there was nothing there for them anymore. Their life had come to an end. Their way of life had come to an end. And this was all they had left. And there was nothing on the horizon. There was no family. There was no kids. There was no home. They just drifted. And that's what we portrayed in this film, and that's what makes it such a whole story. You get everything. You get characters. You get this really heavy storyline all the way through, telling you about the gunfighters' lives, the deaths, the sacrifice of the gunfighters at the end, how the villagers survived to go on farming and digging in the dirt and showing perhaps more courage than the gunfighters. Because yes, they're good with a gun, they can kill someone, but it's the farmer who toils in the field day in, day out, hoping the weather will stay nice, and if it doesn't, if his crops fail, he'll go out and he'll carry on going to feed his family. And as Yul Brynner says, that's true courage. You know, that's courage. I can kill a man fine with a gun, that's no problem at all. That doesn't make me a good man. And that's what this film is. It shows you everything about this film. It totally encapsulates a story with deep characters, with great action, and a fantastic ending. So I really can't praise this film enough. If you haven't seen this film, if you've seen the new one and you like it, go and watch this one. If you haven't seen the new one, if you're interested in westerns at all and you haven't seen the 1960 Magnificent Seven, please go and watch it. See what I'm getting at. You'll love it, believe me, you will. And if you don't, I apologise. Please let me know why, because it's always been one of my favourite westerns. That's about it. Thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed this review of the original Magnificent Seven, obviously more reviews are on my channel on YouTube. Please subscribe or share me on Facebook, on your Facebook page. But thank you for watching this. You guys take care, and I'll see you for the next one. Bye for now.